guests, ladies and gentlemen, I, Sharanya Pushpataran, would like to welcome you all to TradeFinex 2019. As you all have gathered here from different parts of the globe, I extend my warm welcome to the United Arab Emirates. TradeFinex is a global platform for peer-to-peer trade financing which has been created by XinFin. The primary objective of XinFin is to minimize infrastructure deficit by enabling peer-to-peer financing. It will be further explained by Mr. Atul Khekade. He will also be explaining about XinFin license, ADGM license, and live network and integration. So please, can you come on the stage?
Okay, good morning, guys. Thanks for coming over. We were, working on a lot more headcount globally. There, in fact, people were, going to come in from across the world, US and London, and there was some reason why they couldn't do it because of the travel advisory that was issued by, by the government. Obviously, you all know there's something going on that's not really safe for people to travel from there. But that's fine. They're all joining in here over Zoom. So we are going to have one of FIF's biggest integration partner. We have some projects from Turkey who are signed in as well. Also joining is some of our community members. We have almost 5,000 of them. So these are small and medium businesses across the world who are tuning into Zoom to get to know this. Now, what is the reason for getting you all here was firstly, what is TradeFinex? So TradeFinex, we call it more like an open standards platform. So while it is a company that is headquartered here in Abu Dhabi global markets, and it's a regular participant, we have been working in this space for a while now, even before the blockchain was came into existence, and where it actually needs to work together as an ecosystem. So when we go out in the market, we want to work with the industry. We get clients. What people ask for, hey, are you following the standard? What is the ecosystem that you're working with? And there is the only way to get the ecosystem together is to get all the stakeholders together, and so that when we get, say, a customer or someone who wants to work with us, they also effectively have to work with the regulations or the regulators or all the people like, say, Bitfinex here, or if someone is in Dubai, they might want to work with DFSA, or someone from Europe might want to work with BPI France. If they're Oracle customers, they already have Oracle's systems running together. So all this is actually more of an ecosystem play, and that's the reason why open standards or open protocol are so much important to build. If I was selling like a personal computer, it would have been very easy because I just have one customer to sell it to, and that guy is not going to depend on other people for it to be bought by him. But in this case, it's all ecosystem, it's all global. Many people work together, they work with standards, and lack of standards is actually that hurts us the most. And that interoperability is something that we aim to achieve with this open standards roundtable to work together. Now, what are we focused on? We believe that the foundation of any ecosystem or any economy is the intent for a buyer and a seller to work together. So even if you have, say, 100 AD or 100 US dollar in your wallet, if you don't have a value system on the other side, you're not going to spend it. You'll never know, you'll not know what to do with it. And that's what gives the basic, birth to the economic activity of trade finance. And all the industries related are, we kind of think that they are more like connected to it. So whether a buyer or a seller is worthy of doing a transaction, it's that's what gets covered in the asset tokenization market. How people are going to settle across borders, that's what FX settlements is all about. How the buyer and the seller are going to honor the agreements, what standards are they governed by, are pretty much followed by the procurement standards. And because we have to work across the globe, across regulated markets, there are different companies, different laws. It's highly constrained. It's much more difficult sector to work, but it's very rewarding as well. So it's probably the biggest markets in the world. If you look at the market size for all this, it's possibly tens of trillions of dollars. And that's why we bring all the ecosystem partners together here. That was the main intent. So, whether it's the regulated systems, how we should do the reporting for customers that, we need to work it, or we want to make sure that there is a minimum friction or overhead for them to, to join, to work with us. Because whoever is, people are coming in, and so in the blockchain world, people usually have this tendency of going in and saying that, hey, you should just, disrupt, scrap everything, what you have, and work with something new. But we know that's not going to happen. People are always going to work with the legacy systems that they have. Something more important is laws is something that you cannot change. Laws, it's very difficult for regulators to change the law just because new technology is coming in. And that's why it's all about open standards and interoperability. So this is what we aim to do. While we are a platform in ourselves, we are also platform agnostic. So our APIs work with any platforms, but the underlying network itself is, it's designed to interoperate with any other system out there. Also, last year, what happened with Facebook, how they manage the customer's data, this has opened a whole new level of complexity and opportunity at the same time for how enterprises are managing the data. The GDPR came in. The technology has immense potential for people to have the data at the same time not owning it. And I think most of the people are not still aware of how this technology that can be used, and that's also one of the ways of using working with the standards for ecosystem participants. So we are, as I said, we are our own network that has gone live. We are possibly one of the only network that has KYC enforced at its core. You can say we are, possibly if we do become successful eventually, we may be able to, reach where Swift is, but we don't really consider Swift as our competition. We already have some sign up from, small businesses, some financial institutions that want to work with us, but yeah, let me actually demonstrate you a live network. Yeah, so this is what we have. We already have a bunch of companies who are regulated by their own financial, their own financial regulators as a part of this. What they are basically doing is they are, first of all, they're all KYC enforced, and secondly, they are, at this time, I think it's more about document sharing or identity sharing without owning the data. But eventually, we see that, this network itself can become the standard for interoperability for some of the even large companies that are working. So For example, how this network works is in a very hybrid way. So if you have, let's say, a public network, and your regulations do not allow you to work with the public network. We also have a private layer that can interoperate with any other platform or that exists, and still be able to verify a very limited amount of data or transaction that you need to verify to work with, especially across borders, which otherwise becomes a tough challenge. On integration points, as I said, we work with core banking system, regulated systems, work with standard ISO 20022 interactions, Swift partners. The network is really designed for enterprises and financial institutions to, basically, work with what they have, create a digital replica of what they have on the network, not enforcing them with anything else. It's basically a trust medium for people to work with each other. And as I said, we have a regular license here in ADGM. We work with 29 plus regulators across the world, where we don't really intend to go in and set up our companies there, but we want to make it very friendly for companies which are already working there to work with us. Why are we going to use this for? What this whole trade and finance or TradeFinex is all about is people basically want to do two things. Firstly, in the whole trade finance and asset ecosystem, there is still everything is still paper-based. So not the whole legacy model still needs to upgrade quite a bit. But at the same time, the regulations themselves are not really, getting the regulators themselves are actually trying to learn what this is, which way this is heading, or even what regulations to set about. And that's why we aim to work with participants together. We are originally based in Singapore. We have a ADGM licensed company here. We also are in Europe. What we effectively do is get all the ecosystem participants from across the world to work with each other and work across different regulators as well, and work on either interoperability, data standards, or connecting systems together, whether it's payment systems or any other. This is not again the whole agenda for this roundtable, and having this as an introduction is not to create a platform that wants to work by itself, but more like getting us the interoperability with all of the ecosystem partners, so that we can effectively address the biggest demands that is existing in the market right now. It's possibly tens of trillions of dollars of market, and we do see a lot of demand. But again, it goes or stops to the same point where people think, hey, we want to work with you, but what about the others, or what about the rest of the ecosystem? Even to the level of SMEs, which have come to us with, say, hundreds of millions of their trade receivables, and they want to get access to the other side of the ecosystem. They are currently not able to work with us, and I think if we are able to work together, as ecosystem partners, maybe we will be able to effectively address the market that is waiting for being onboarded on the system, but at the same time actually show real value for the people that are who are actually at this time just curious what blockchain is about, but actually demonstrate them what this whole thing really means. Before this, actually we did set up one of the first production blockchain networks in India, which exists right now as a fraud prevention system. It's almost valued at about $100 million. So this is not the first time we are doing it, but this is the same process how we did it with. So thank you all for joining us here, and we'll we want to spread this ecosystem together. We want to be as interoperable as possible, have the lowest friction points as possible, work with open standards and data as possible. We have partners across industries, whether it's some of SWIFT partners or financial institutions that are already working with us. There are a lot of opportunities for working us together, whether it's regulators, there are ecosystem partners that we can onboard with regulators like yours, or liquidity providers like yours, or anyone who was going to be participating in this open standard platform. So thank you so much for coming over, and we'll have I'll have Saranya take over for getting us to the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next session is about Abu Dhabi Global Market and Reg Labs, and it will be covered by Mr. Steve Barnett. He's the Head of Financial Center Development at Abu Dhabi Global Market. So,
No. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody on behalf of ADGM. Looking around the room, I see some familiar faces, so I apologise for boring anybody that's heard me say this before. For those that haven't, I'll apologise for boring you the first time. Welcome to those on the phone as well. I decided that I would do this without slides, because then I could react in part to some of the things that were said earlier on and just get across some of the key messages. From our point of view, ADGM is one of the youngest international financial centres that you find anywhere in the world. Well, looking at interesting things moving behind me, that's good. We were established and open for business in October of 2015, but since then we've made quite a lot of noise. I think there have been a few things that have really separated ADGM from our peers. We wanted to make sure that we provided a platform for people to do business easily in this region. When we went out and talked to our stakeholders, clients, potential organisations who wanted to do business here before we launched, we wanted to make sure that we did something which met organisations' needs. We didn't want this to be a field of dreams where you build something and just hope that it meets the needs of the marketplace and people come. There were a couple of things that came to us extremely strongly through those conversations. One was that we had to be a place where people could trust the environment. We needed a legal framework which was supportive of the growth of business, and where people felt confident that they were doing business on a level playing field, and I'll say a little more about that in a second. The second was that we should be an easy place to do business, and we should try and cut through some of the inherent challenges of doing business in emerging markets or in our region. The third thing that people suggested to us, and we really encouraged this, was that we should be innovative. And when we talked about innovation, a lot of the idea that we came to market with was that we should be a facilitative regulator. And I say that with some hesitation, because the trend for regulators around the world in this day and age has been that we should have a mantra of preventing bad business. Our philosophy is very different to that. Our philosophy is one that says that we should be enabling good business. Yes, the standards have to be set. Yes, we have to make sure that everything is done in a way which protects the growth of the market and the participants in it. But the philosophical standpoint is extremely different, and the actions that you take as a result are very different as well. For me, the rule of law, the first point that I mentioned, has been probably the biggest differentiator that we've had when we talk to international participants in our marketplace. When we pushed a little harder to see what people wanted, it was quite clear people wanted us to directly apply English common law as the basis of our civil and commercial legal system, which is something that we've done, and in that respect, I guess our closest parallels would be Singapore and Hong Kong. Having a strong basis of law is only one component of it. Being able to make good decisions on it is important, and so we've brought 8 Supreme Court judges from around the common law world who are experienced in financial services and commercial business, and they undoubtedly make good decisions under our framework. The third component of that is being able to make quick decisions, and I think that's what we've done there is very important for this forum. We now have the first digital court structure, digital arbitration structure that you'll find anywhere in the world. So our disputes are heard as a matter of course by video conference. It means that we can do things far more quickly than you would in a traditional environment. Concept of paper case files no longer exist, they're all digital. And just to give you a little flavour of what that means in practice, one of the first things that we heard through our courts was an application for injunctive relief. And to cut what could be a long story quite short, it was granted in 3 days rather than the normal 2 months that you would expect to see around the developed world. The final part of that then is enforcement and enforceability, and we have strong enforcement with, which is untouched with the local courts, with the courts across the UAE, and with common law courts around the world. So the basis of law is something that's enabled people to grow. At the end of the day, a financial centre, picking up on some of the themes mentioned before, a financial centre is actually nothing more than a place where willing buyers and willing sellers of stuff can come together and do business. And our role as ADGM is to find ways to support that. We grant licenses to people who come and do that, and those are traditional licenses for the 100 or so financial services firms that have registered in ADGM so far, and the 1,600 or so non-financial firms that have registered to do business here. It's a little more than that, though. It's also about the innovation that supports growth. A number of different ways in which we've brought that innovation to market. We've pacemaker going off again, I guess. A number of different ways that we've done that. One way is certainly very early on was to create the RegLab, our regulatory sandbox for fintech. And our ideas behind that were really that we see what we call fintech today being what we call financial services in a few years' time. The sort of people that we really encourage to innovate in this space are those that haven't been spending 20, 30 or more years in financial services, like old beggars like me at the front. And part of the reason for that is that in many ways we know too much. So we know how things have worked traditionally, how they've worked historically, and so we think in those terms. So when somebody says to me, oh, we want to do settlement of an equity, well, I sort of think of trust settlement structures. I think of the way in which things get custodized. I think of the paying agents, everything that goes associated with that. When I talk to innovators in the fintech space, I say, oh, that's okay, then you send a message from here to there and it's done. So we're completely re-engineering these chains, and we should be allowing for that. So the idea of the RegLab really was that we shouldn't try and then take a traditional regulatory environment and try and force innovators to operate in that environment. We should be able to do something on a much more bespoke and tailored basis. Yes, we still have to make sure that the risks are managed appropriately, and that's our responsibility as a regulator, but I think you can do that in more encouraging and innovative ways than just trying to shoehorn and constrain something new by applying old school thinking to it. And that's what we've done with the RegLab. It's been tremendously successful. We're now through our fourth cohort of applicants. By some measures, we have the second busiest regulatory sandbox for fintech anywhere in the world. And we're delighted by that. It's something that's been at the heart of our philosophy. It's not the only thing that we've done in terms of innovation, though. The expression used before was around ecosystem and the building of ecosystems, and that's something that we're very passionate about. It comes in terms of the traditional markets. So when we think about the growth of wealth management and asset management, which are core strengths of Abu Dhabi, we are a centre of wealth. We have $1 trillion of wealth invested around the world. We have 2 of the largest sovereign wealth funds. We have one of the highest GDPs per capita in some of the wealthiest families. We should be not just a centre of wealth, but a wealth management centre. And so bringing together families with private banks, with the law firms and advisors who help people to structure that, with the asset managers, with the capital markets players, to create supportive ecosystems, with the custody and settlement that goes behind that, is the types of things that we do. And we do that in the digital space as well. So not only have we got the regulatory framework which encourages and allows people to grow, but we've worked very closely with our partners to develop things like the Hub 71 initiative, which includes the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, it includes SoftBank, it includes Microsoft, it includes KPMG Digital Village, it includes Plug and Play with Bardala, funding through the GADN 21 initiative, and it will increasingly include things like our digital sandbox, which will allow people a platform on which to innovate and collaborate. So it's very much about building ecosystems and encouraging things to grow. Before I finish, and I don't want to speak for too long, I know we started a little late, so I don't want to bore you too much, but just picking up on one thing that was mentioned in the opening session about the importance of legal environments. And I know I started on this, but I wanted to finish on it as well. One of the things that I really like, being responsible for development in ADGM, is when we get people who come to us and say, if only. If only we could do this. If only we could do that. And frankly, the biggest innovations that we've come to market with, and there have been many, I could give you long lists, but you can read those on our website. There have been many, have come because smarter people than us have great ideas. And the smarter people than us are people like yourselves. People who are innovating, people who are working with clients, people who are out there in the marketplace. And some of those things may seem small. You know, when people came to us and said, if only we could have trust structures to help manage inheritance in this region, then we were able to do that. And if only we could have vehicles like foundations, so that you can have asset holding entities that allows you to do that. So we did that. If only we could do, and these things continue to snowball. And so my request is, please continue to challenge us and allow us to respond to your needs for growing and innovating in this marketplace. The point that I was going to come to is that you mentioned at the start that it's difficult to change laws. Actually, one of the real benefits for us in ADGM is that we have delegated powers with our board being our legislative body. So what it means is that we've been able to change our legislation in an extremely dynamic and responsive way. And so we are able to do things that other places around the world haven't yet done. I guess probably the best example of that, and it's one I'll leave you with, is what we have done in the digital asset space. So we were the first in our region to issue guidance on digital assets. I hate calling them cryptocurrencies, they're not currencies, my personal bugbear. On digital assets, and we put out that guidance probably at the start of last year. In the middle of last year, we were the first regulator globally to build on that and come out with the first comprehensive set of regulations for digital asset exchanges. As you probably know, our regulatory cycle, the first key gateway for that is the approval in principle. I couldn't possibly say that we've now got 7 firms, digital asset exchanges, that have gone through that part of our gateway and are getting close to coming to market. But that's the idea of that was that as a regulator, we should be encouraging things which are using new technologies to come to market. We shouldn't be looking at them through the lens of technology. We should be technology agnostic. We should be looking at them in terms of what they bring to the growth of a marketplace. This is a great example of that. By putting in place standards that said, actually it's not just about the AML and KYC, which some people seem to think is what's required to allow a digital asset exchange to exist, but you have to look right about traceability from the point that something comes into the digital world to the point that it leaves it. And you can do that now. It has to be about proper systems controls and good governance around technology. You can do that. It has to be around proper market surveillance, as you would in any market, particularly one where the assets are tightly held and where you've got the potential for high volatility and therefore risk of market manipulation. You have to have proper custody of those assets, and you can have digital custody of the digital assets. It has to be around client suitability. There is absolutely nothing wrong with digital assets. There probably is something wrong if you've got mom and pop trying to put them in their 401k. And so you have to have proper suitability around this. And if you can do all of those things and you can do them effectively and properly, then we as a regulator should be supporting this, not constraining it. And so we've taken the lead on that and will continue to take leads on things like this where there's real market opportunity and we can support growth. So that's what we are as ADGM. We are a regulator, we're a registrar, we're a court structure, we're the academy in which we find ourselves today. We support very strongly international development and international growth. There's a reason that the word middle is in the Middle East, and we very much embrace our role as being a conduit for a lot of other things that take place, and look forward to continuing that role. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us. Next, we'll take a short networking break and gather again in 20 minutes. And after the break, we'll have panel discussions.